Hi, welcome to TT Cases. In this current session, we are going to discuss about Azure Function App. So the Azure Functions is a serverless solution that allows you to implement the functionality with less code, less infrastructure, and save on the cost. So developers no need to worry about the deploying and maintaining the servers where the Azure cloud infrastructure provide all up-to-date resources needed to keep your application is running. So the developer happily can implement whatever the business functionality or whatever the function you want to implement. You can focus on it. No need to worry about the servers. So when to use these Azure functions? So there is a lot of scenarios you can use the Azure functions. So I have taken a main scenarios to listed here. One is process the file uploads. For example, there is a number of users been uploading files into the blob storage. So once the files has been uploaded into the blob storage, this Azure functions will read the files content from the blob storage and will process the data and will insert the data or will store the data into the database. So we can use to process the files, we can use the Azure functions. And one more scenario is run the scheduled tasks. For example, consider an application where the front end public users can upload or can use the application. That particular application data will reside at the front end app DB. So whatever the request has been submitted by the public users, that data has to be processed by the backend users. So they are not in the same database. They are not consuming the same database. The public, whoever submitting the request is storing at the front end app DB, and the backend, the officers is using the backend app DB. So how this data will be seen? So we can schedule a task to sync this particular DB request data into the backend DB database. So the backend officers will receive the request and they will verify the request and they will process the request. And using this data, the management can able to generate the reports to see how many requests is being received, how many get processed in time, how many requests is processing out of time, like is delaying, or how many requests are still pending, or they can able to use the data also, like how much time they are the front end user taking to submit this application, how to optimize this particular uh, data, all those things they can able to see in the reports. And when to use the Azure functions? So one more scenario is build a scalable web API. So using the Azure functions, you can able to implement the REST endpoints using the template is HTTP triggers. And one more scenario is respond to the database changes. For example, you are using a Azure Cosmos DB and there is some database changes being happening. Whatever the database changes or state being updated in that particular database, it has to notify to the user saying that this particular data being modified by or updated by particular user. It has to notify to the concerned users. But that scenario also you can use Azure functions. So I have taken a basic important scenarios. There is a lot of scenarios you can able to use the Azure functions. You can go to the Microsoft Azure functions documentation to see, to read all those functions scenarios when we can use this Azure functions. So one more topic we are discussing is Azure Functions hosting plans. So this hosting plans defines the function type of the function you need, like the function or the program you are implementing is heavy, or it is a not heavy function or heavy function, or how much time you need to run and how many dedicated resources you are required. Based on that, they have been segregated in multiple hosting plans. In that, first plan is consumption plan. So in the consumption plan, the, the resources will scale automatically, and this Azure will allows you to pay only for the resources your Azure functions being utilized. How much time your Azure functions is run, how many resources being used, based on that they will calculate uh, the amount, and you can pay for that amount only. When your application is not running, you no need to pay when you are using the consumption plan. So on the consumption plan, instances of the functions host are dynamically added, and the resources will be removed based on the traffic of the incoming requests. So when to use this hosting plan, the consumption plan, when we have to use? So when we want to run, when we have a cost considerations and your program is not heavy. So remember that consumption plan have a default timeout is 5 minutes, and you can set maximum is 10 minutes. So your program should finish within the 10 minutes. Your program exceeds 10 minutes, then you will get the timeout. So the consumption plan is not suitable to you. So when you are using the consumption plan, you need to consider that your program is not heavy and your program execution can be completed between 5 to 10 minutes. And consumption plan, the default resources being allocated is 1.5 GB memory per instance and 1 CPU. And it allows you pay when your whatever the resources being used, that it will allows you to pay. And premium plan. So second one is premium plan. So what is the difference between the consumption plan and the premium plan? So in the premium plan, automatically scales the based on the demand using the pre-warmed workers, which runs the application with no delay after being idle, and runs on more powerful instances connect to the virtual networks. So here two things we have to observe. First thing is, in the premium plan, there is a dedicated resources which is running uh, continuously, and when there is a request is coming, the request will be processed immediately without any delay. In the consumption plan, the resources get be ready when there is a request is coming. That time resources being allocated, meaning that the resources get warm up and the request has to process. So the processing speed will be low in the consumption plan. But when coming to the premium plan, the resources is running continuously, since there is no delay on processing of the request. So that is one advantage here we are seeing. And connects to the virtual network. In the consumption plan, it will not allow to the connect to the virtual network. But premium plan, it will allow to connect to the virtual networks. So when to consider this premium plan? So as we discussed that your application, your function apps runs continuously or nearly continuously. So that means it is running continuously, meaning your program is very high and the number of incoming request will be received is very high. And you need more CPU or memory option than what is the provided in the consumption plan. So here in the consumption plan, we are getting 1.5 GB of memory per instance. You want to get more memory or more CPUs, then you have to go for the premium plan. Your code need to run longer than the maximum execution time allowed in the consumption plan. So we discuss here the consumption plan allows 5 to 10 minutes maximum, otherwise it will get timeout. For example, your program is heavy, which takes more time, you have to use the premium plan. You want to provide a custom Linux image on which to run your functions. So you want to use a custom Linux image, then also you have to go with the premium plan, since it is not allowed in the consumption plan. And one more plan is dedicated plan, meaning you have created a dedicated app service plan, and those rates, whatever the app service dedicated plans will be, allocated, that rates will be applicable for this dedicated resources. When to consider this dedicated plan? For example, you have an existing underutilized VMs that are already running other app service instances. Creating Azure function using Azure portal. So first you can able to create Azure function from the search, or you can create the resources. So click on the create resources, then search for function app, and you can click on the function app create. So first you need to create a resource group. So say I want to create my custom resource group D2KSS, and I will call this function name is D2KSS function app, and then you can deploy the function either through code or the container image. So for this scenario I'm using the code, and you can select the runtime stack is .NET and version is 6 and region East US, my default region, and I'm using the hosting plan is consumption plan, and then go to the storage account. So for creating a function, we should have a general purpose Azure storage account. It's mandatory. So I'm going to call this as D2KSS storage account, and go to the networking and enable the public access is on, and enable the application insights, and this option allows you to integrate the continuous integration, to enable the continuous integration. So when you click enable, it will prompt you to authorize the GitHub account. When you authorize the GitHub account, it will load the respective organizations, repository and branch, etc. So for this demo, I'm not implementing that continuous integration. Then click next and review and create the Azure function. So click on it. So it will take 1 to 2 minutes to create the Azure Function App. So the deployment is completed. Click on Go to Resource button. And these are the options is covered in Azure App Services. So if you did not watch that video, please watch for to know what is the purpose of these options. So now I'll cover specific to the Azure functions. So now we can create the Azure function in two options. Either you can create using the Azure portal, and or you can use the Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code you can use to create the Azure functions. So for now I'm using the Azure portal to create the Azure function. So click on create in Azure portal, and it will prompt the templates available to create the Azure functions. Now you can use, for this demo, I'm using the Azure Blob Storage Trigger. So select it. So it will prompt the sample values. So which is name called Blob Trigger 1 and the sample. So the path I will use is D2KSS blob path. Remember that this path we have to create a container. So we have to create a blob container using this name. So remember this name and click on the create button. So the function is getting configuring. It will take a while to configure the function and allow to run the function. So click on the code plus test. So this option will allow you to take you into the editor to run the or to modify the code and run the function whichever been created now. So here you will have the options save, discard, refresh, test, run. So if you have changed any code here, it will allow you to save that particular code and you can run the application. So here you need to pass the blob path is d2kss blob path, and whatever the file you are being uploading in the blob path, you need to pass here to find the name of the file, to read the name of the file, and to get the size of the file. So to do that, first I have to go to the storage account which we just created during the demo. I'll open that storage account, and under the storage account you will have the option to create the data storage containers. So I'm going to create the container and will be name it as the one which we have used in our example, d2kss blob path. And I have to give the option access level. If it is a private, so no anonymous access, and blob is anonymous read only access, and container anonymous read access for container and blobs. So I have choose this option. So there is a warning that all the container and blob data can be read by anonymous requester. Client can be enumerate the blobs within the container by anonymous request, but cannot enumerate containers within the storage account. So just click on the create button. So the container is get created. I want to upload a, so here I'm getting an error. You don't have a permission to list the data using your user account. So that's the reason I'm going to switch to my user account, then upload the file. So I'm using the sample PDF test.pdf, and the file get uploaded. So I want to read this file from this function, Azure function, and I want to get the name and size of that file. So what is the file name I just uploaded is test.pdf. So click on the run button. Now the request is getting processed. So once the request is processed, you can able to see the app logs here. So the request is get processed, and you can able to see what are all the logs you can able to see here. So I'm very much interested to show you here is whatever the log we are being written in that particular program, whether it was written or not, we have to see that. So you see here, you can able to find that C# blob trigger function is processed, and the name of that file is test.pdf, and the size of the file is. So the request is get processed successfully, and we are able to read the files from the blob. So this is, in this example, what we did is we are reading the files from the blob, and we are getting the size of the file from that blob. And you can extend this example, like for example, you have created two blobs, and once the file get uploaded, you have to process that file, and you can move that file into another blob. You can extend this example, or you can implement any custom examples for your project requirements. Thank you. One more scenario we covered in this demo is creating a Azure function from Visual Studio tool. So when you open a Visual Studio, if you already install this Azure supporting tools, then you will find this template called Azure Functions. You select that template, click on the next button, and choose that name of the project name is HTTP Trigger App, and click on the create button. So when you click on the create button, it will prompt you to choose the template. So I'm choosing HTTP trigger, and the storage account is Azure Web Job Storage Emulator, and authorization level I'm giving the anonymous, and click on the create button. Once the project template is created, you can able to see the sample code which has been generated here. So here it is indicating the project function name. So you can able to change this function is HTTP trigger app. And here the class name you can change or you can leave it as it is. And now what you can do is to ensure that this particular template don't have any build errors, run this particular project. So the build is in progress and build gets success, and now you can able to see here the project is function is up. So now the function is get up and there is an endpoint get published. So you can use this endpoint to get the response from this particular HTTP request endpoint. So for that I'm going to open a browser and copy the endpoint and click the enter button. So when I click the enter button, there is a text is printed that this HTTP triggered function is executed successfully. Pass a name in the query string or request body for a personalized response. So where we get this text message is that when we are returning a response, so we have handled that if there is a this particular name parameter is empty, then we are passing this text. If parameter name is not empty, then we are passing this welcome text. So I'm adding this query parameter is name equal to D2KSS. So I'll pass that. Then I got a welcome text called hello D2KSS. This HTTP triggered function is executed successfully. So meaning this else function get executed. So now I want to extend this template and I want to implement a sample program. So I want to wipe out this all this sample code and I will change this as a number. So from the query string I want to receive a number. From that number I want to identify that particular number is even or odd. So for that I am going to convert this query parameter into integer variable. Then here I am writing an example that number is equal to or number percentage 2 is equal to 0. Then I will pass a text is entered number is even number, else entered number is odd number. So this particular output I want to record in a string format. I will call this as a result and I'll pass this result parameter into this return object. Perfect. So now what we have to do here is we run this application and whether see this particular program is executing properly or not. So ensure that this particular function is up. Right, function is up. Now you pass this, instead of name you pass as number equal to 10. Then you will get a response called entered number is even number. When you pass number equal to 11, you will get a response is entered number is odd number. Perfect. So now we are able to run this particular function locally and we are able to get the response whatever we are expected. So in this scenario, I want to show you how to publish this particular function into the Azure portal. So first right click on the solution explorer and click on the publish. When you click on the publish, you will get a prompt called where to publish today. So there is a multiple options. From that options, I will choose that Azure. So I'll choose Azure and click on the next button, and then you can able to see that Azure Function App, Linux or Windows. So since I'm using this Azure Function App Windows function, then I will choose that template and click on the next button. So if you did not log in, then it will prompt you to log in into your Azure portal account. Once you log in, you will return to this particular page. Since I already log in, it will not prompt me to log in again. So then here you can able to choose the function which you have created in Azure portal, then click on the finish button. So once you click on the finish button, it will generate the publishing steps. Then you click on this publish button. It will allow you to publish the particular function which you have created in your local to the Azure portal. So this particular publishing steps will take a while, maximum 1 to 2 minutes it will take to publish this particular function into Azure portal. And once it published, the function get ready. So the function is published successfully. Now you can go to the Azure portal and refresh the page whether you have get that whatever you have published the function has been pushed to the Azure portal or not. So the function is published successfully, and you can able to see that HTTP trigger app function is available here. Click on it and click on the code plus test. So click on that test run function. Now you can able to see that two methods is populated here, either get HTTP method or post. Since this function is supported both HTTP get and post, so I'm taking this as a get method and adding a parameter called name called number and pass the value 100 and run this particular function. So now you can able to see that the entered number is even number, and you can change that and click on the run button, and you can able to see that entered number is odd number. Like how you tested in your local, like you can test using the URL also. So use this link to get the function URL. Click on the get function URL, then copy that function URL and browse into the browser or use the Postman tool and pass the query parameter called number and pass the input is 200. So now you will get a response called entered number is even number. So this is how you can able to create the Azure function in your local, and you can test in your local, and you can publish that particular Azure function into the Azure portal, and you can able to test from the Azure portal as well. Thank you.